Girls, what was the most obvious hint you dropped, and the guy just didn't get it? We were playing life and he was the police officer. The rule is, if you spin a 10, he gets your speeding fines. I literally pulled open my button down and exposed my breasts and said, what can I do to get out of paying this? He said, Mom, I am an officer of the law. Are you trying to prostitute yourself to me? A couple days of flirting and physical innuendo later, I literally had to spell out that I was trying to frick him. We've been together 6 years now. Yo, that dude is serious about his role playing. I'm the guy in this situation, but I couldn't help not sharing this story. In college, this girl I was really into asked if I wanted to hang out at my dorm and drink and watch Netflix. She came over and we were watching and drinking on the couch in the living room. Per my suggestion. Things are going good, and about an hour into it she says, ooh, lem see your room. So we go to my room. She takes her shoes and socks off and immediately sprawls herself out on my bed and says, oh my god, your bed is so comfortable. I responded with, we live in the same building. It's the same bed as yours. She left about 10 minutes later. Oh my freaking god, dude, lol. Honestly, I think I reacted in a similar way. He told me my hair looked nice. I said, bet it would look nicer with your hands in it. He said, in a very confused tone, you want me to style your hair? This one is great. At least he managed to say he was clueless. We were talking about canoes and I said, I'm like a canoe because I'm wet and you can go inside me, and he said canoes aren't really wet. Some PPL think he was rejecting me, but we ended up dating for 2 years. When my boyfriend and I had just started dating, we were laying down watching a movie, but this was a small bed and he was being respectful and giving me space. I kept wiggling backwards so I could get closer to him and he kept inching backwards too. Since he thought I was just trying to get comfortable and he was in the way, he ended up sitting in a chair next to the bed. 3 years later we are still together, and I still think it's pretty funny. He told me that when he was in the chair he purposefully left his hand next to me in case I wanted to hold it, but I guess I missed that sign too. He didn't get out of the bed because he was uncomfortable. He truly thought he was taking up too much space and didn't realize I was trying to cuddle. This one made me laugh out loud. Imagining him scooting all the way off the bed just to give you space is so sweet. LOL. A couple of weeks ago, to my boyfriend of 3 years, me, undresses and lays naked on the couch, waiting to bone him. Makes dumb joke, ooh you're naked, that's so weird. Me, dies a little bit inside. After chatting for hours on top of a mountain from sunset until like 2 AM, sharing a blanket, me leaning my head on his shoulder, telling him he's attractive, etc. He turns to me and says, how do you tell if a girl is into you? He suspected that you were hinting and gave you a way to confirm or deny. Good move on his part. I'm a guy, but I once had an experience where I took the hint but still got rejected. A girl had asked me if I lost my virginity yet. We were in high school. When I said I hadn't, she said that I could practice on her whenever I want. Mind you, we walking home after school because we lived close. I try to act on this hint when we get to her house and she said she was only joking and doesn't want it to be weird with us as friends. Before we started dating, I told my current boyfriend I love you and he said, oh I love you too, you're such a good friend. The whole time we thought we were both friend zoning each other. Wasted half a year going in circles SMH. I guess it does get a little tricky being a guy, cause I would never want to make a girl feel uncomfortable, or that I'm forcing her into something. It kinda makes friendly gestures and hints sound real similar. It's best to be friendly. Guy here was invited back to study by one of the girls in my class at her apartment. We're about half HR in and she says she might take a shower. I'm like, okay, kinda random, but okay. Anyway, she starts telling me the door to the shower is broken so don't come in. Says it 3 or 4 more times. Again, I'm like, okay, weird she's said that multiple times, but okay. HR later, the shower is still running. I can hear her singing and humming away, so I know she's okay and hasn't drowned. Thinking, gee, that's a long shower though. Water goes off and she comes out dressed and says, you didn't come in? I'm confused as I'm like, WTF, she told me not to. She sits back down, clearly distracted and not wanting to study. We wrap up after 5 minutes. Drive home. Mate asks me how study was about a week later in the situation, which I hadn't given a single brain cell of thought to since. I explain to him. As I'm saying it out loud, the penny drops as to what a big fuckhead I am. She's the idiot, not you. She literally told you not to come in. It's entirely reasonable not to come in. So answering in lieu of my late wife here, husband, am dumb. Like, really dumb. She and I met and became friends very quickly, but I didn't know she apparently had a huge crush on me. I thought she was out of my league, and apparently she thought I was out of her league too. But she couldn't stop the feels. She rubbed her feet on me while we were talking, asked me in detail about my package, gave me her phone number with the line "hit me up if you want pizza" and fricking. We went out for lunch. She offered to fill at me for a Dr. Pepper, and she was very insistent that we got meat lovers pizza when I asked her what she wanted for watching a movie later. After we watched the movie, she was in my bed. I figured she was just wanting to keep warm and cuddle, but she strutted into my bathroom stark naked and I had some DDs staring at me. She kissed me and told me, "I want you to frick me, you idiot." A regular romance story there. In my defense, she had a really warped sense of humor and I thought she was kidding with all that stuff. It felt so natural with us being friends that the thought didn't even cross my mind until she propositioned me that there was potential for more. I'd had some really fricked up exes and I thought romance was something where I had to jump through hoops for the other person and wait on them hand on foot. But she was different. That's why she was the one who I got on one knee for. Advice to the ladies out there: if my wife telling me "I want you to frick me" got through my legendarily thick skull, I think as a last resort that'll get through to anybody. This was really sweet, and I hope you're doing okay. I asked a guy on a festival to come take a shower with me. He didn't get it. He just repeated there was only one free shower and I was like, "Well, they are big, I'm sure it's fine," and he just looked confused and told me I could go first. We became close friends since that happened about 2 years ago, and this summer I spoke to him about it and he really had no idea. He did the biggest fassapum I've ever seen. Before my boyfriend asked me out, he kept hinting at the fact that we were both single and everyone though we would be cute together. I was like, haha, yeah, not realizing he was trying to ask me out. I'm not as brutally upfront as some of these people, but mine happened yesterday. How do I know a girl is flirting with me, he asks. She touches you a lot while you two are talking. I cannot relate at all. That never happens to me. I'm sure it does, I tell him and hit his arm. I can't think of any time that's ever happened. For Valentine's a couple of years ago, I mailed my husband a package. The note said, and I quote, "I want you now." I was ready to spring into some extra fun steamy time whenever he opened the package. I had to sit him down and explain a couple of hours later. He was like, "Oh, yeah, my wife's learned to just holler come to bed now, otherwise I'm a dumbass that doesn't get it." On our first date, my current boyfriend and I went out to dinner, to a bar, and eventually back to his house to watch scary movies. After hanging out for almost 8 hours at that point, practically cuddling into him the entire time we were watching movies, dropping as many hints as I could, around 3 AM when we were both fighting to stay awake, I finally had to look his dumb ass in the eye and ask, "So are you going to kiss me or not?" Though he was totally oblivious, it did show his good heart. He was about to let me fall asleep on his couch and spend the night without even trying to kiss me. I knew he was a keeper after that. Guy here, but once had a girl drag me into the bathroom while at a college party saying she needed help finding her marker pen. We didn't find it and I figured out what was really going on a year later. When I was about 35, I lived in a beach town near a university. My neighbors were all college kids. Next door was 2 college girls. One was always flirting with me. One hit summer day, she turned up at my door in nothing but a long t-shirt. She asked if she could hang out in the account. I said sure, and she came over to the sofa I was sitting long ways on and laid with her back to my chest and asked if we could snuggle. I was okay with that. She then asked me to rub her belly, which I did. As you can imagine, after about an hour, I was getting a little worked up and touched her breast. While rubbing her belly, she jumped up and stormed out. I was like, WTF. She later said she didn't see me like that. I asked her why she'd show up almost naked, lay between my legs like couples do, and ask me to rub her belly and then get pee when I try to progress things. She said she looks at me like a big brother. I was like, WTF is your family like? And that is why so many guys in this thread didn't get the hints. It isn't a universal thing. I had a girl invite me round her house once just to show me her posters. They were all of Harley Davidson motorbikes, and she said she's never ridden a Harley before. Awkward silence, and after a few other sort bits of small talk I decided to be on my way. 2 years later I'm sitting on the bus and realize what she meant. Harley. Ridden a Harley. My name is Holly. Dang, I feel so bad for her. That's a perfect line too. One time a girl straight up asked if I wanted to take my pants off and I didn't get it. I was like, nah, they're actually not uncomfortable at all. Usually when girls ask you to take off your pants, it's for their comfort. No one wants to come in contact with the kind of tough fabric a lot of pants are made of when they're sleeping. Also, always take off your belt. That's just cruel to accidentally poke someone with your belt buckle. Literally said I want to be yours and the dude just keeps smiling and goes on about random space facts. That one hurt a bit. I am a guy, but I can share my identity as the guy that missed the hints. I went to a store where there was a girl I liked in college. We used to small talk while I browsed and never bought anything. Bring a poor college student. This time I came in the store and she said hi and we chatted a bit while I shopped. She complained, I'm going to be home alone tonight. My family is out of town. I replied, oh that's too bad. She says, I'm off at 5 today. It was 4 at the time. What are you up tonight? I'm up for anything. Oh nothing. Just sitting at home and watching a movie. My brain must have completely self-destructed because the conversation ended there. I never saw her again after that. She either quit or was avoiding me. I must have been in a daze from school to miss that cue. School does that to me too. Plus the fact that I'm shy and therefore believe I never get attention adds to the oblivious bliss. We were discussing costumes and I sent a picture of me in my bunny suit and said I'd need help out of it. His response was telling me he hoped my roommate was home or that would suck. I had to tell him I was implying I'd like him to take it off me and it took him a minute to catch up. Anyone concerned about it being very much a suggestive picture? I'm not sure it could have been perceived as just friendly, and no, you won't be getting proof of said picture for those in my DMs, lol. I was very much ready to hit him with the bat of bluntness because we get along great and he'd seemed flirty with me before. Invited him over to watch a movie, eventually laying my legs across his lap and hard flirting, but after 4 movies I had to finally make the move. We'd been flirting via text, obscene texts, exchanging nudes, etc. I had previously told him to his face that I liked him and I'm giving him the green light to make any move. Still nothing after a month of dating. I seem to always take the lead on things and I like assertiveness, but I wanted to give him the opportunity to feel like he could be in control. That it was okay. I was very direct many times. We'd had several discussions about it. Still nothing. Even after I finally made the move I had to literally say, I want to frick you. I once was modeling clothes I planned to take on vacation for my boyfriend. After showing off a couple of outfits, I told him to close his eyes and changed into lingerie. He opened his eyes and I asked him what he thought. His jaw dropped and he said, "You can't wear that outside." I put my clothes back on. Not a girl, but I was staying a night at a hotel, and the hotel bar had just closed. I went out front for a smoke and start chatting with 2 women. We shoot the crap for a few minutes and then all head back into the hotel and to the elevator. We get in, they press 15, I press 9, and one of them turns to me and says, "I don't suppose there's a secret bar on the 9th floor we can go to?" My dumb butt responds, "No, but you can grab a cab and be at a bar in 10 minutes, then the doors open and I leave." He invited me to his house to watch a movie after a few dates. He ended up playing League of Legends for hours while I was laying in his bed and asked him many times if he would like to join. Sorry, just one more match. We dated for 2 years. We matched on Bumble, dating app that the girl has to talk first, and I started a convo with him. He thought I just matched him because we were friends. No, it's a dating app. We didn't start dating until almost a year after that. We are married now. What girls don't realize is that guys have to ride an incredibly thin line between being a dog and being a gentleman. Girls want a guy who won't paw at them the whole courtship, who will recognize little hints and make the first move. It's an incredibly nerve-wracking position to be in. My advice to girls would be, don't drop hints, say what you mean. As a guy, to any girls reading this, you have no idea how easy it is to miss hints. Please be more obvious. We are also really bad at being scared of taking signals wrong. I'd hazard to guess most clueless men are actually trying to not be a dong because they don't want to lose a friend, be seen as a creep, or end up in prison. I went out of my way to come in early and talk to this guy every day for like a month before someone else told him I was into him. I also repeatedly told him I liked him. He thought I was just being nice. When a girl admits to liking you, a guy faces a dilemma. 1, you could be joking and pulling his leg. 2, you just sympathize for him, or you like him as a friend and that's it. A girl came to my house once and spent the night. Around the time for bed, she told me she doesn't sleep with a top on or panties. I told her that's okay, I'll sleep on the couch so she can be comfy. She called me from downstairs later that night and told me she couldn't sleep and she was cold. I figured, well, obviously, you're naked, so I gave her another blanket and went back downstairs. I'm glad everyone is laughing at my pain. I've tried responding the best I can, but some of you guys are getting weirdly mean and it kills the mood. Dang, I hope she wasn't hot. A guy I'm currently seeing invited me camping earlier this month. We were cuddling and I noted how nice the showers are in the bathroom at the provincial park. I said they're really warm and lots of space for 2 people, trying to hint for him to join me for steamy time. This man, without missing a beat, says actually, you could fit like 10 people in those showers. We laughed about it really hard the next weekend and he said I knew what you were getting at, but my brain just wanted to answer it logically. I like that guy. I used to be oblivious, probably still am. There was a girl at a local grocery store who was flirting with me, but of course, I didn't get it. After quite a bit of this, I leave town for a few months and we're corresponding via email. I can't remember why, but I was asking her a string of silly questions, like, why is the sky blue? Chicken or the egg first? Where do babies come from? Etc. She answered them all, saving where do babies come from for last, and answered it with, when you get back I'm going to show you. I got that one. My buddy in college was stressing over when to make the move to kiss a girl he liked. While we encouraged him to not wait for the perfect moment and just go for it, he admitted he should have tried to kiss her when they were in the shower. If this is the truth, I think I need a brick for my own head. I had a girl go out with me after work once for dinner, have some drinks, go back to my house, get too drunk to drive home, so I put her to bed in the spare room and never even attempted to kiss her. She left in the morning early and hated me after that. It was after work, so she followed me back to my house in her own car. That was the obvious hint I missed, is what I assume now. Friend was complaining he was hot because of his long sleeve shirt. I said, oh, I'm sure you'd be just as hot without a shirt. He was so unaware, but I finally just kissed him. Did something similar when it was 90 degrees out. My crush at the time said, God, I'm so freaking hot, and I relied, now you're just stating the obvious. I'm a guy, but one time I was hanging with a longtime friend of mine who I used to have a crush on and who knew that I had a crush on her and had rejected me numerous times over 7-8 years in her dorm. We decided that we were both tired, but her other bed was occupied by our other friend, so I was gonna lay down on the floor. She was like, there's room in my bed for you anytime, so I hop in bed with her thinking nothing of it. The next few minutes were kind of a blur, but eventually we were literally hugging with her leg wrapped around me, and she looked me in the eyes, bit her lip and said that she was frisky. I never made a move beyond that, since she had spent the past almost decade of my life rejecting my advances. That wasn't a hint. That was plain I want to frick you, but it was smart of you not to go any further with that. It would have only exacerbated your feelings and confused you even more, although I'm sure that alone confused you. It's completely fine if she doesn't want to be with you, but she shouldn't have tried to take advantage of you in that moment. Girls, what was the most obvious hint you dropped, and the guy just didn't get it? I had a friend who had a super obvious crush on me, one so obvious that I noticed it, which, considering that I can pretty oblivious, is saying something, and kept hitting on me all the time. She was not subtle about it. At one point we watched a movie together and she practically cuddled with me the whole time. Again, not subtle. The problem was that she was in a relationship at the time, and 1, I was not going to go out with her during while she was still in a relationship, and 2, wasn't going to ask her to break up with the guy just so I could be his replacement. I considered the guy a massive jerk and thought she should indeed break up with him. But she seemed scared to be single, so I wanted her to do it for her and not so she could just jump into another relationship. There was also the matter that I wasn't sure how well things would actually work if we did get together. She was sweet and really cute, but she also had some unaddressed issues with her mental health and sometimes talked to me in ways that I didn't feel were terribly respectful. Eventually, I just stopped talking to her altogether because she was, by that point, engaged and still hitting on me. She'd also said a few things that had crossed a line by that point. Straight up told him I like him. I think his response was something like, "But I'm kinda trash," or something self-deprecating. He's friends with my best friend, and she confirmed that his depression is so bad that it takes a lot before he actually accepts any sort of positive attention. I think to some degree it's mutual, hard to tell, as I, too, am oblivious when guys drop hints. We're all on the same proverbial boat, it seems. Here's a summary of some common answers. Also, AAAA, thank you for the silver. My first award. What happened after? We still talk nearly daily. No forward motion on the I like you front. But I'm gonna be there for him whether we're friends or something else. There's definitely some forky tendencies, I suppose. Some solid points out there about the lack of compliments towards men. Everyone needs to be complimented here and there, whether it's about looks or talent or even just a nice shirt. Accepting them is hard as heck though. Usually guys don't simply miss the hint. They are often too nervous and either let it slip by their subconscious, or notice it and don't know what to do with it, so let it go. You really have to be direct if you want a response. Usually, but not always. Yes, many hints certainly do go unnoticed. There is fear on both sides. Fear of coming on too strong and being rejected, and being too vague as a result. And then fear of misinterpreting hints and ignoring them as a result. If only we ignored our fear 10% more, how many millions of good times around the world would occur as a result. Misinterpret signals too. Most of the time, it's they're just being friendly. I once invited a co-worker crush over at 9 PM on a Sunday night. When he asked how he should get to my place, I told him to take an Uber and that he should bring clothes for work the next morning. Somehow he arrived at my apartment thinking I had invited him over to help me pick out an outfit for a first date I was going on later that week. He finally realized what was actually happening a couple minutes after he showed up, when I told him I didn't want any of our friends to know about this yet. And it was terrifying and awesome, and it worked out. I'm a guy here, but I know Amanda would say. I literally jumped on him and tried to kiss him, but he just laughed awkwardly, dodging my kisses and telling me stop being so frickin' silly. He realized it like a day later, but she'd moved to another state. That was the last time I ever saw her. Dang, you missed out on I'm moving out of state, so I wanna have crazy hot fricking session with someone I'm never going to see again, frick. I was once dating a guy who was super bad at knowing when a girl was into him. I could tell he was into me but wasn't getting my subtle hints, so I flat out told him I want to frick you. He replied with thank you. I clarified with right now, which didn't result in him making a move for several more weeks. Friend's uncle. So you've been coming over a lot. Are you two dating now? Me. At this point, it's up to him. Him? I asked him out for Valentine's. He told me to frick off. We were really close friends, so I didn't take it too bad. 1 year later we're hanging out watching a movie and he keeps getting closer. I didn't get the hint and kept scooting down to the other side of the couch, not wanting to make it weird between us. A few days later, I asked why he kept getting close to me. He said that he was interested in me. I asked if that meant we were together now. He told me UHH. Do you want to? So we got together. I later asked why he told me to frick off. He thought I was messing with him. We're now engaged. TLDR. We're both dense and can't get the most direct hints. Type this on break, sorry if it's choppy. I was working out pretty hardcore. I was talking to some people at work, in a restaurant, and mentioned that my pecs were pretty sore. I wasn't trying to show off or anything, just casual conversation with co-workers. One of the girls, who was a massage therapy student, said I should come over and let her massage my pecs. I didn't go over to her place. I'm an idiot. She was hot. Like real hot. Like super hot. I quit that job with a no-show, no call. They just never heard from me again. Maybe a years later she came into the new place I was working at with a date. She waited for her date to go to the bathroom and told me when I didn't show up that she was calling all the jails and hospitals looking for me. I guess she really was into me. Sucks. I had my head up my butt over an ex, so I just wasn't in a place to pursue something new. Oh well. This guy I was dating decided to read to me a letter his father wrote to him that had advice on dating. My date was an excellent gentleman with a whole lot of things going for him. Unfortunately, hygiene wasn't one of them. Anyway, he came to a part of the letter where his father had listed different reasons why it is so important to have good hygiene. I piped up then with "Oh yes, I love that piece of advice. Your dad is really smart." He never took the hint. When I later broke up with him, I never told him, but hygiene was one of the reasons. I really hope he's doing okay out there and either figured it out or found someone with a stronger stomach. Yes, I should have told him directly. I was younger and dumber then and didn't want to hurt his feelings. I know better now. Thanks for all the advice. All I can think of is a joke. An engineering major meets his friends at the college cafeteria, riding his new bike. His friends admire the bike, ask him where he got it. The engineering major says, "Remember that cheerleader I was tutoring in math? She rode her bike over to my apartment today, brought it in and leaned it against the wall. She took off her clothes and threw them on the floor. She laid on the bed and told me that she got an A in math. And to thank me, I could take whatever I wanted." The friends look at him admiringly and say, "Good choice in taking the bicycle. Her clothes would have never fit you." As a guy, I have a general fear of being humiliated. I've read some situations incorrectly in the past and felt awful, so I never assume a girl is interested. I could be alone with a woman and she could walk into a room naked and I would honestly not assume she was interested unless she specifically said let's have frick. Even then, I don't know if I'd think she was serious. I feel bad for you, man. That's the problem with hints. You act on them, you'll be humiliated for reading the situation incorrectly, and the same thing happens if you don't. So I'm a dude, but back when I was single, me and my buddy were sitting at a bar when a lady pulled a chair up next to me and kept looking over. Eventually found a way to join in on our conversation and starting asking me questions about what I do for work, where I went to college, etc, and every answer I gave her reply was something like "OMG, that's so great, wow, I have so much respect for people like that, etc," like almost overly impressed at my relatively average life. We eventually left after some more beers and banter, and my friend gave me so much crap for being clueless once we got outside. Still makes me laugh that I'm such an idiot with this kind of stuff. IMHO, your friend should have just walked away with a single "catch you later." Don't screw this eyes point to woman up and leave for a different part of the bar. If you need a bigger hint, he could say "my wingman duties are done for the day" and leave. I had a friend in college who I used to hang out with a lot and smoke herb at her apartment. She was always a bit flirty, but one day we were hanging out and other friends left. She asked if I wanted to see her hula hooping skills. So while I'm sitting there on the couch, she gets out a hula hoop and is suggestively hula hooping right in front of me, looking me dead in the eyes. I thought it was hot, but didn't say anything. In retrospect, she was clearly trying to get me turned on. It turns out she was freaking casually with several of our mutual friends, so probably best that it didn't lead anywhere. But I was clueless for sure. Suggestive hooping intensifies. A guy here, but my now wife still kids me about the time when we were first dating. We had already been intimate just before this event, but it was still extremely new. As in the next date after our first time, we went out for drinks and I didn't realize how much she had. We get back to my place. I put her to bed in my bed and head out to the couch. She was legit mad at me for not taking things further until she realized my point of view. It was actually the first time she stayed over and I had to leave for work in the morning, so I woke her up to say goodbye and that I would be back for lunch and how to lock the door if she had to leave before I got back. Fun memories of me being the upstandiest of gentlemen. I'm the guy, but my co-worker would always make it a point to stop at my desk and talk to me. She would ask about Rick and Morty. I have a figurine on my desk, and then tell me about Bob's Burgers. She would also ask me to make more coffee when we were out because you make it so perfect. I finally asked her out and she immediately said yes. We talked about her flirting and she said she was just about to give up before I asked her out. We've been dating a month now. Does my breath smell like dong to you? Guy, UHH. No. Do you want it to? In his defense, he didn't quite hear me. I learned later. Yes, he was kicking himself for missing that opportunity. Guy here. Missed probably the most obvious hint ever. So my crush's best friend literally came up to and said crush really is into you but is too shy to come up and tell you. My brain then decides to be like you are you. No one could ever feel that way about you. She is probably trying to trick you. Don't fall for it. Then I say if she wants anything she is going to have to come up and tell me herself. A year later, I realized she was telling the truth. Not me, I'm a dude, but rather a story of a girl that was giving me a hint that didn't click till years later. One time I was over at my best friend's house, and my mom dropped me off early. I was waiting on him to get back home because we had plans to hang out. I don't remember where he was but not important. And I was sitting in his dining room waiting for him to get back when his sister comes down the stairs and sees me sitting there, going on about how excited she is about her new panties she just got. Then right after she asks me, have you ever seen my room before? Like a naive dumbass. I said yes, I have. To which she replies well if you wanna see it again, come on up and I'll show you. I just said okay. I continued to sit in the dining room like a naive virgin teenager until my buddy got home. I didn't care if it was the fact I was a virgin at the time, because she was a couple years older than me, if she, and still to this day, is one of the most gorgeous women I know, or if it was because it was my best friend's sister. I don't know why I just didn't think anything of it, but the memory always stuck in my head years later how odd she acted for whatever reason. And now that I'm older I understand. Still kicking myself over it. I pushed him down on the couch, took my shirt off, sat on his lap, and kissed him. Too subtle. We're married now so he did figure it out eventually. I'm the guy in this story, but yay, so we were at a party together. Then everyone decided to go to a different party, and she told me she was gonna get an Uber for the both of us. And I was like cool, don't have to take my phone out. Once we get there first, we realize the place is not popping. So I ask her whether we should head back and she's like I'm okay to back wherever. And my reasonable brain thinks yay, we should probably go back to the party we were at. And this time I'm like I should get the Uber to be nice. And I order it back to the party. She seems sorta out of it once we get back to the party. And then like throughout the night random things would happen. Like she got a cut and I was like you probably need a band-aid and she was like yay do you have any and I was like oh yay but it's back at my place. And she'd give me like are you getting me one face? If you can guess. No I didn't. And then by 1 AM, she says she's gonna head back home and she orders an Uber. And as she's leaving, one of my friends comes up and tells me you freaking dumbass, she wanted you to take her back to your place. I freaking hightail it out of the room to catch her before she gets into the Uber. Don't even think the Flash could run that fast. But it's all good boy, I catch up to her and I am like haha I got a better idea. And she rolls her eyes and cancels the Uber. Elmal later that night she asked me how much of an idiot I was and why I didn't pick up on anything. Not a grill, but a victim of obvious tries. Girl says I have a terrible bruise here sitting beside me on couch. Way I up on inside thigh, wearing miniskirt. Feel it. Feel it. It's so hot. Me gently touch his bruise with a fingertip. Yes. Yes it does. I look up. She's staring me dead in the eye with raw intensity. I retract hand. Turn to the TV. Think to myself, oh boy. I too am not a grill. You are an attractive man. At least I think you are. At his place quite late one night, I had assumed we were going to hook up. We were hanging out in his kitchen, and I suggested moving to the sofa to be more comfortable. Nah, I'm good standing. Hey, we should get a drink sometime and hang out. Dude was completely unaware that was me asking him out on a date. I do find that hard, because when you drop obvious hints and they get ignored, I'm not sure if the guy is gently rejecting me or if he's just dumb. Look, this isn't a story, but I'm hoping to help a lot of people out here. If you're not sure someone is flirting with you, the best thing you can do is in a playful tone ask them, are you flirting with me? You know right away whether they are flirting with you or not. If they are, you laugh and play it off as okay, just making sure, or they say no, and you play it off as okay, just making sure. Either way you come across as confident and having a sense of humor. I asked a guy for his number. We go out for a few hours and after I get home, he asks me if it was a date. Bro, I held your hand and bought you pizza. I would hold his hand, snuggle into him at group gatherings etc and kiss him on the cheek. He thought we were best friends. We're dating now lol, and I always wind him up about how clueless he is. Let this be a SAR to women who want to hit on men. Do not give hints, be direct. Here's the gist of it, we are not idiots. We are not stupid. We are not dumb. The truth is that we want to avoid looking like or being labeled as a creep or that guy that misinterpreted. You see so many posts on our Ask Reddit from women complaining about how they were just being nice or doing something completely innocent and a guy misinterpreted what they were doing as a flirt. And conversely, you see posts like these where women say they did something flirtatious and the guy in question read it as something innocent. Here's how it goes. Put yourself in the shoes of a guy. Who would you rather be? The guy that's labeled as dumb because they assumed something flirtatious was innocent. The guy that's labeled as creepy because they assumed something innocent was flirtatious. In a social climate like this one is clearly less of a burden of a title to carry around than the other. Men don't want to be seen as that guy, so we'd much rather play it safe and assume that everything is innocent until it's direct. With all that said, please be direct. So this was 2 weeks before me and my ex started dating. He used to walk me home from school every day. I only lived a 12-minute walk away from school, whereas he lived a 20-minute drive away from the school. Still made sure to walk me home from school every day. Anyways, not the point. Anyway, one day, he walked me home and I went to open my garage and saw that no one was home yet. So I make the executive decision to invite this boy, who I had a raging crush on, inside my house with no one home for a house tour. He agreed and we went. So I show him around the house, and the entire time we're flirting, I eventually bring him upstairs to my room. So we hang out in there for a while and we start talking about freaking. We ended up making a deal that if we both hadn't lost our virginity by senior prom, we'd lose it to each other. Once again, we were in my house, with no one home, in my room with my door closed. I'm pretty sure telling a kid you've made clear you're flirting with heavily that you would indeed frick him is a large sign. We ended up dating 2 weeks later. We're dating now is how he asked me out. I was in 10th grade when this occurred. In my awkward sophomore mind, I viewed this as a pretty straightforward deal. I later talked to him about it about 2 weeks into the relationship and we both had a laugh about it and our awkward inability to tell each other that we liked each other. Once again, I was 15. I don't see how he missed a hint. He wanted to uphold the terms of the deal, which implied you needed to at least try to lose virginity to someone other each other before the prom. I was at a party at a bar and I was hitting on this guy. I was really interested at the time, so I was giving it the full court press. Like, I could not have been more clear, and he just was not getting it. We ended up chatting about our families and he told me this story about how his parents met while serving in the military, and something his mother almost ended up getting caught. Marsh yelled because his father didn't realize she was completely in love with him, because his father was completely clueless. I slugged down the last of my drink, slammed the glass on the bar, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "Really? Is that a genetic trait?" And, whoosh, he kept right on talking. I gave up after that. My late fiancé didn't realize I asked him out for our first date. I said, "Hey, what are you doing Friday? Want to grab dinner?" It was only when he mentioned it to a lady friend of his that she told him that I asked him out, but he initially didn't believe her. God, I miss him. He was cute. What did that bee do at your wedding? Soon-to-be mother-in-law doesn't show up to the wedding cause she hates her soon-to-be son-in-law. Reasons still unknown years later, but she dang sure showed up to the reception for the free food and open bar. Not my wedding, but my cousin's. Her best friend kept jumping into every picture she could and she'd stick her middle finger up at the camera in every picture. And then she tried to make out with the groom. No one has heard from her since the wedding. My uncle went around taking photos and getting people's names and addresses to send them the photos. A month later, he sent out photos printed on an advertisement for his fly-by-night prepaid legal business, along with hard sell marketing material. So basically, he lied about what he was doing to get people's contact info for his business. Pretty pee off about that one. Ha ha ha, that's great. I mean, it's crappy, but it's great. Her jackass cousin tackled her, the bride, in her wedding dress. I approached him and asked something like, "Why did you do that? She's in her dress." He looked down, walked away to leave and muttered, "I was just fricking around." Mother-in-law left immediately following the ceremony. She loves to be over the top and dramatic. She didn't even say anything to my wife before doing so. We only found out when it was time to take pictures that she left, missed all the photos in the reception and never gave her a reason. She hasn't spoken to her daughter in over 2 years. Most likely blames everyone else for her problems rather than herself. It blows my mind. Not going to lie, probably better off without that type of person in your life. My sister's wedding was a bit over the top but beautiful. Castle, south of France. Need I say more? She had this group of friends who all put some money in an envelope as a present. One girl, the new girlfriend of one of the boys, said something like, "I don't have a lot to give and feel embarrassed to put my participation in front of you," so she took the envelope in the low and added her money there, away from judging eyes. Yep, you guessed it. She took more than 500 euros from the envelope. They only find out when one of those friends asked, weeks later, if the newlyweds had enjoyed the 1,000 euro during the honeymoon. The girl's excuse was that she was planning her own wedding and could just afford a city hall affair, and it was so unfair my sister had such a great venue. I'm personally quite immune to princess wedding day, but stealing money at a wedding is so wrong. I think the girl ended up as a bit of a castaway. My sister's marriage didn't last anyway, so I don't know what happened to her group of friends, but I often think of this girl and imagine her as one of life's constantly unhappy and envious. No way. I hope they called the dang cops on her. My mother-in-law changed our reception venue behind my back. Luckily, I found out and was able to get it changed back. This was my first introduction to her boundary issues. I have since learned that if she thinks there is even the slightest chance that someone won't do what she wants, then she feels completely entitled to use whatever means necessary to get her way. I think she legitimately believes that people who won't do what she wants are purposely being mean to her. She also passed out dollar store glow necklaces at our reception. She didn't ask me or anything, of course. It was a complete surprise to see her handing out glow necklaces as wedding favors. Frick, that's my worst nightmare. Not a B, a C. Little guy Big Mouth was a really close friend until at my wedding he stood in front of my mum when we were cutting the cake and proceeded to give her the finger when she asked him to move over a little. Just after that, while my dad was taking photos of me and my wife cutting the cake, he keeps nudging my dad's arm so he would get a shaky photo. My dad gave him a swift elbow to say frickin' stop, then said C stamps on my dad's foot. My dad loses it, pushes him out of the door to my father-in-law, who then pushes him further outside to his brother, who is a big guy and an ex-bouncer, picks him up by the collar and slaps him around the face a couple of times and drops him on the floor. Cops were called because he wouldn't calm down and had a night in the cells. I don't speak to him anymore. If you are reading this, Ricky, you are a C. The dad-in-law combo pleases me. Family unity. Not my wedding. I was just hotel management. Bridesmaid got so drunk she crapped herself, then proceeded to crawl down the hallway to and from the public restroom, and then the elevator, dribbling crap down her leg. Then she passed out in front of the elevator and crapped some more. Showed up on H. She barely made it past the ceremony. My now wife's best friend did this. Not my wife. It still made for a huge crap show behind the scenes. She got stuck in the outhouse or something. She deliberately took forever to get ready and started a fight with her boyfriend, my husband's best friend and best man, right before the wedding. They showed up late because of the whole thing, which caused our whole wedding ceremony to be 20 minutes late. It is well known that she doesn't like me, so it was obviously a power play and done on purpose. She then didn't talk to me once during the entire wedding. It felt very awkward. I have one photo of me on the dance floor and she is in the background giving me the worst stink eye. LOL. The photo must be awesome. What a bee. Not mine but my friend's brother's rather religious wedding. Bride's mother makes a speech and says deadpan, if you hurt her, I will slit your throat. In her speech, at the wedding where her daughter is marrying the nicest guy, everyone was so stunned and embarrassed. No one laughed. Bride and groom could barely look at her. My sister bridesmaid frowned through the whole ceremony, like a pronounced frown with the pouty bottom lip, like not subtle at all. Destroyed all the pictures from the ceremony. She then got drunk, dominated every conversation. Then when one of my friends tried to change the subject, she became irate and later tried to convince me that my best friends don't really like me and had begged her to go on a group date with them. Yup, until it was embarrassing. Of course, when I didn't believe this insanity, she immediately told me a completely outlandish story about being abducted by aliens and how if I don't believe her I must see because she wrote about it in her journal once. So that means there's proof. I think it's official. She's lost her freaking mind. This reminded me of the fact that I ruined all of my sister's wedding photos because my resting face just macked me, looked enraged. Couldn't smile either because I always looked like Chandler from Friends. Damn it, I had just repressed that. At my brother's wedding, his mother-in-law sat her 11 last-minute guests at our guests table because she clearly did not give a frick about my family's guests. We couldn't add another table because we were at the max tables that would fit in the venue. So I had to ask the reception venue staff to add chairs to our other tables, which overcrowded our other tables and fricked up our seating chart. His mother-in-law cuts me off saying, no, you cannot have 13 people to a table. It's unlucky. Then B, why did you steal our table? Huh, you freaking dumbass superstitious B. What the heck were we supposed to do? Ask our guests to leave? I completely ignored her, turned to the staff member, and had them add the chairs anyway. Okay, I'm done ranting. My uncle. He made a scene about how his doctor had misdiagnosed his mental illness. He doesn't have one. He's an attention W and claims he has every disease disorder under the sun. For years, how he was going to sue them, etc. He literally stood up and made a speech about it. We had a very small wedding, only be about 40 guests, so it was completely inappropriate. Ex-girlfriend who I hadn't spoken to in 4 years sent me a text message minutes before the ceremony was to start that simply said, "Don't." Totally threw me, and whilst I was able to brush it aside and get on with the job at hand, I've never really forgotten it. Also, my wife's only brother, who is an attention-seeking knob, came out to her and all her friends the night before the wedding. Even though everyone knew for decades he was gay, but chose to choose that night to take the attention away from his sister, who he was insanely jealous of. That would have been a perfect opportunity for a new phone. Who dis? My mother, my so and I ended up doing a courthouse type marriage. Did the papers. Found someone to marry us. Went to her office to do it. The only people there were my ex-stepdad. I call him bonus dad, mom, aunt, uncle, and grandmother. My mom was my maid of honor. Bonus dad was my SOS best man. Right in the middle of our vows, my mom breaks down sobbing, interrupting everything. The B is obviously trying to get the attention on her since she can't seem to stand not being the middle of everything. We try to continue over her sobbing but only starts crying louder. My aunt, being the amazing person she is, grabbed the ring from my mom, pushed her towards my uncle, who pretty much dragged her outside. Aunt quickly announced she's the maid of honor now, which I was completely fine with, and the vows carried on. After signing everything, we go out to get to the car and my mom is just furious at me for letting your aunt do that. I just ignored her and went to the car. On the upside, when we were saying our vows, bonus dad started tearing up. It made me happy because it was super unlike him. Kinda guy who never says I love you because that's just him. Ex-first sergeant. Served from 1972 to 2007, manly man. I love you, bonus dad. Frick you, mom. I'm amazed by how many moms carry on like this. It's nuts. I get angry just thinking about this. It was my husband's best friend's mom, who was not invited. but showed up anyway and brought a bunch of small children with her. It was explicitly a no kids, no exceptions wedding. Tried to sit at the same table as me and tried to take pictures of me while I was eating, and loudly criticized one of the caterers because she thought she saw him put a used spoon into a buffet dish. He didn't. My mom, who is pretty blunt, straight up asked her, "Who are you and why are you here?" I personally addressed all the invitations and I know we didn't invite you. To which she replied, "Well, my son needed a ride." My mom told her to leave, which was so unbelievably awkward, but she left without making more of a scene. Your mom is the queen of badassery with a spine of titanium. Got outrageously drunk, fought with their didn't spend time with any of the wedding party, created unnecessary drama with family members, never said congratulations. Yeah, my brother-in-law is a B. At my mom's best friend's wedding, a young lady decided to wear a white floor-length dress and kept asking the DJ to play all these line dancing songs that only she knew the moves to. I think the groom was more P than the bride, so part 2 of my wedding gift to them was to casually drag her off the dance floor and talk to the DJ about reading the room when it came to requests. So many of these stories involve butthole DJs that just don't get how to properly do their job at a wedding. Baffles my mind. Mother-in-law showed up 30 minutes late, told my wife she looked terrible, made negative comments the whole time. Been working on a nice jig to do over her grave ever since. Upvote for jig, I love jigs. After the ceremony, we were taking group pics with both families. After a couple of pictures, my mother-in-law starts walking around loudly proclaiming, "Can we get a picture with just the close family, please?" My husband and I were like, "Sure," but then she kept saying it over and over again, until finally I realized she wanted a pic without me in it but was just being passive aggressive about it. So finally I'm like, "Do you want me to move?" And she's like, "Yeah, that would be great. I've been meaning to get some family pics done and this is the perfect location." Continues to get a million pics of her. She's my husband's stepmom, her kids and their families, and my husband and his brothers while I'm just standing off to the side awkwardly. Then come Christmas, she has the audacity to send my parents a Christmas card using one of the pics of just them from the wedding with a little "from our family to yours" line. This on top of the million other things she's done to be awful. I cannot stand this woman. I would have later requested that the photographer delete all those photos, but I'm also super petty about that crap. If you're paying, you decide. She got super drunk, gave a speech during the ceremony where she was apparently channeling my dead mom, whom she had never even met, saying how proud my mom was of me. Then later, during the actual reserved time for speeches, she again, uninvited, shared the story of when I met my husband and how I actually wasn't interested in him BC I was trying to frick his friend at the time. She didn't say trying to frick, but she may as well have. It's totally true, but did she have to announce it to my entire group of wedding guests? What a nightmare. We are not friends anymore. Where she was apparently channeling my dead mom. I would be totally okay with this ending, and that's when I killed her. I'm not an actually violent person, but there are things you just don't do say. B stood around and loudly complained about our cake choice, the photographer, our music, and the flowers. B also didn't stop the music I had chose for the wedding march when I had instructed her to. B was the wedding planner. The day before my wedding, my husband's female roommate texted him saying she didn't think she could come to the wedding because she'd be in such emotional pain and would miss him so much. Instead, she said she'd be sitting at home, watching rom-coms, and eating Ben & Jerry's. I kid you not, she had liked him for 2 years. He had assumed she would respect reasonable boundaries like I have a girlfriend and I'm not interested. Do not passive aggressively confess to your crush the day before they get married. Skipped my bridal shower and bachelorette party, but found time to go, uninvited, to the strip club with my husband, his friends, and her boyfriend, who was a groomsman. Came to my wedding dressed as a H and congratulated me by saying she thought it would be her getting married first. We're obviously not friends anymore, and these aren't even the main reasons for that. Give her some credit. Maybe she was not invited to the strip club but scheduled by the manager. Well, I don't want to call my mom a B, but it fits the category. My wife and I told her she could wear any color dress she wanted except navy blue, as that was the bridal party color. What color dress does she wear? Navy blue. Also, I have a suspicion that my 2 cousins that were there that were not invited by me were invited by my mom. My mill did the same balls except I said she could wear a little bit. She took that to mean floor length gown in exact color and shade and claimed it wasn't the same really because it had some silver beading on top. I have a couple. Unfortunately, my first marriage didn't go very well. At the wedding, I had a rented tux on and I asked my new wife not to smear cake on me when we cut the cake because of that. Of course, when the time came, it wasn't just a cute smear of frosting or something like you'd see at most weddings. Oh no, she full on plastered me with cake and a mess of frosting and food coloring. I don't know what was worse, being angry and hurt and embarrassed when the whole room was watching, or when people were pulling me aside later and apologizing for it when her and her parents were still laughing and making jokes about it a couple of hours later. I thankfully remarried a great person years later, and we had a small ceremony that was really very nice. Our photographer was taking pictures afterward before we were heading to the reception, and I had been talking to my dad when he started, so he just took our picture together first. My mom, being who she is, was incensed by not being first to get her picture taken when she wanted and proceeded to throw a fit and leave. My parents had been divorced for at least a decade or so prior to this. Maybe a couple of minutes later, we were all lining up and getting family together for pictures, and when I couldn't find my mom, I learned that she'd stormed off and left on what would otherwise be one of the best days of my life. There'll always be that storm cloud of pettiness that she left behind because she couldn't handle putting one of her kids ahead of herself for 10 minutes worth of time. And there, right there, is an illustration of exactly who I don't want to be. God help me, I hope I'm never like your mom. Showed up in a trashy version of my bridesmaid's dress and brought an uninvited guest. Joke's on her. Everyone knows she was a complete idiot to try and do that, and someone actually told her later that it was super crappy. Reminds me of my Bill's wedding. My sew was the best man and I happened to own a nice dress in the bride's favorite color, the color vest the groomsmen wore. I had to explain to my sew that it was not a good idea to wear it specifically because we'd match and I would look like a tacky clinger in every picture. I know a girl who wore white consistently to all of the weddings she was invited to one wedding season. She was also very aggressive at all of the bouquet tosses. So much secondhand cringe. Everyone was a bee. I had a destination wedding and paid for people to come. People only stayed about an hour at our reception and took off to do tourist stuff. My husband and I spent the majority of our reception alone. We paid out a lot of money to make sure people had fun and they all left. 10 years later and it still pisses me off. It was a small wedding and it did not sure prices now, cost that much to fly to this destination. It was on a beach at a resort. Whoa, that's really fricked up. A whole new level of inconsiderate and egotistical. I'm really sorry to hear they acted this way. I love my aunt, but she scrapped our planned DJ for a live band without telling us. Needless to say, a Skinhead cover band was not what I had in mind for my wedding. And I love me some Skinhead. We gave them a CD with our song on it. After a few minutes and then realizing they didn't have the equipment to play our song, they just started playing something random. I still have no freaking clue what song we shared our first dance as a married couple to. I'm a petty enough guy that if this happens at my wedding, I just won't dance until we can get the right song. I don't care if it's coming off YouTube on a phone stuffed in my pocket. We're dancing to our song. Bridesmaid. I had only a glimpse of her crazy prior to this. Frequent emotional meltdowns throughout the day, disappear to cry for a while, sucker another bridesmaid to comfort her, and carry on like nothing without identifying a source of discontent. Yelled at the nicest woman in the building, not even in wedding party, just being helpful, and stormed off swearing when her decorations weren't perfect. Left saying I can't do this and drove away in a fit with flowers for the reception in her car, eventually showing up late, adding flowers to tables, acting like nothing happened. Bridesmaids were excellent buffers the whole time and it later came out she was jealous of me getting married to a man, and not her. Talk about a twist. Whoa. Wore the same color dress as the bridesmaids, even though she was expressly told not to. And her dress was real loose on the top so her tea kept falling out. Walked around taking pictures during the ceremony with a stupid little point and shoot camera. She's in the background of literally over half of our wedding pictures. It was almost 10 years ago, and I'm getting pee off all over again thinking about it. By the time of our wedding, my husband's 33-year-old sister was still single and she hated that her younger brother was getting married first. How did she deal with it? By trying to sabotage my wedding. The night before our wedding, she got s-faced and, while ugly crying, told my husband that it was supposed to be her wedding and it wasn't fair because she'd be able to plan a much better wedding than ours. That would eventually prove to be false, as she finally got her off-again boyfriend to propose by giving him an ultimatum. We had a small elegant outdoor wedding at a mountain lodge, and my still convinced some family members on my husband's side that the dress code was casual, so they showed up in jeans, t-shirts, and hoodies. I was beyond upset with them for readily taking my Sil's word without double checking with us. Luckily my photographer was sensible enough to exclude them from the pictures as much as possible. At our reception she went around complaining to our guests about how cheap our wedding was. My husband's side is used to those typical church and banquet hall weddings and ours was way different. But still, it's rude to crap all over someone else's wedding at their wedding. The lodge had a hot tub on the property, and near the end of the night when people were starting to leave, she changed into her bathing suit and chilled in the hot tub. This was planned ahead of time because she thought to bring her bathing suit there. My husband and I don't really talk to her anymore. Yikes. Also, what kind of idiot turns up to a wedding in a hoodie? Even if it's casual, surely you want to look good. What did that bee do at your wedding? By the time of our wedding, my husband's 33-year-old sister was still single and she hated that her younger brother was getting married first. How did she deal with it? By trying to sabotage my wedding. The night before our wedding, she got s-faced and, while ugly crying, told my husband that it was supposed to be her wedding and it wasn't fair because she'd be able to plan a much better wedding than ours. That would eventually prove to be false, as she finally got her off-again boyfriend to propose by giving him an ultimatum. We had a small elegant outdoor wedding at a mountain lodge, and my still convinced some family members on my husband's side that the dress code was casual, so they showed up in jeans, t-shirts, and hoodies. I was beyond upset with them for readily taking my Sil's word without double checking with us. Luckily my photographer was sensible enough to exclude them from the pictures as much as possible. At our reception she went around complaining to our guests about how cheap our wedding was. My husband's side is used to those typical church and banquet hall weddings and ours was way different. But still, it's rude to crap all over someone else's wedding at their wedding. The lodge had a hot tub on the property, and near the end of the night when people were starting to leave, she changed into her bathing suit and chilled in the hot tub. This was planned ahead of time because she thought to bring her bathing suit there. My husband and I don't really talk to her anymore. Yikes. Also, what kind of idiot turns up to a wedding in a hoodie? Even if it's casual, surely you want to look good. Tell me which is the worst. My mother refused to wear the color that I asked her to wear, which my mother-in-law and all my bridesmaids wore and which matched my table decorations. Instead she wore a sparkly silver sequined gown which had the express purpose of upstaging the bride, me. Then my sister-in-law threw a hissy fit because when we went into a small room with the rabbi for a blessing only the wedding party was allowed to come. It was supposed to be intimate and small, hence the small room. Since sister-in-law couldn't come she didn't let her husband, who was a groomsman, my husband's brother, come either and made a big noisy stink about it. Third, my husband's cousin somehow got the band to honor her for her birthday with a long speech and a special dance for her and her husband, even though it was also my cousin's birthday and was also my best friend's anniversary and it was my freaking wedding, not her birthday party. Overall my wedding was magnificent, but there were definitely 3B there. I say the third one is the worst. Kick the B out. Let her have her own party if she wants to be the center of attention. My sister's wedding. Our relatives on my father's side are not the greatest, just not really respectable people. They are on the poorer side, which isn't a problem, but their attitude is, they think the world owes them something. My parents both grew up in poorer families, but worked really hard and became pretty successful. Because of this, my sister and I constantly got comments from our cousins that were just straight crappy, constantly making us feel bad for being better off. To combat this, kids were not allowed, only aunts and uncles. It bummed us out because one family on my dad's side is actually awesome, but the rule stood because of the crappy ones. So of course, the worst of all, our aunts brings her fricking kids. Her 2 daughters share her bratty entitlement. It was awful, and now caused a rift with the family we like because their kids weren't welcome. But they are. Another crappy aunt tried to make the entire event about her. She was pissed that the guests of honor were my parents' best friends and not family. My grandmother introduced the best friends to everyone, and when it got to that aunt, she stuck her nose up, turned around and walked away. The best friends cracked a joke as she walked away, and everyone was laughing at her, which was nice. Well, I have 3 crappy aunts, and they basically tried to destroy the evening. Now my family makes themselves busy during holidays. My sister lives in another state. My parents leave a few days before Thanksgiving to go to their summer home, and don't return until after New Year's. That leaves me alone to make excuses why I am not attending their holiday parties. Channel your inner Phoebe. I wish I could, but I don't want to. Super useful. Also, sorry you have such a crappy extended family. Wife's friend got s-faced drunk, told groomsman to go frick his grandma, ripped her dress while twerking, and tried to get in my car as we were leaving for our honeymoon. Good times. My sister's wedding. The groom's grandma and female cousins, parents are deceased, wiped their feet on my sister's dress train during pictures, then stole all the bottles of wine that had the labels customized to read the wedding vows of the groom's parents, then proceeded to bring back hard liquor, do shots, and grind on the DJ while he was playing bass booming hip hop that my sister and her husband explicitly said they didn't want. After those shenanigans, they also threatened to physically assault my sister and my mother. My sister didn't confront them because she didn't want to give them the pleasure of seeing her hurt or angry on her wedding day. The groom is no contact with his cousins, and low contact with his grandparents. My sister hasn't seen any of them since the wedding. The grandma wasn't doing any grinding, but the groom found out later that she orchestrated the whole thieving of the wine bottles, which occurred while my mom and sisters stepped away after the ceremony, because the woman who was going to perform was dying in hospice, and we needed to say goodbye. My sister is white, my Bill is black, and I don't think his family is xenophobic. I just don't think they liked my sister. Didn't show up. We had set up the tables so that we had an even amount on both sides of the dance floor, and this one family who RSVP'd lets my in-laws know about 2 weeks before the wedding that oh we can come now. Is that okay? My in-laws said sure. This made my wife insane. We had to redo the seating for her whole side of the family, add a table and rearrange everything. Well, the day comes and they don't show up, send no gift and never mention it. We had a very small ceremony and a very intimate wedding dinner with our families. One of my closest friends invited herself. I should have said no, but I felt bad. Plus I had just recently told her she wasn't gonna be the maid of honor at my wedding reception, which was couple months away. So I thought maybe this would make up for it. One extra person wouldn't hurt, would it? Biggest freaking mistake. We had a long day, and she started drinking early, and could not control her alcohol. I had asked her to keep my parents company since they're here from a different country and they don't speak a lot of English. All she focused on was the many bottles of wine. By the time we sat down for dinner, she was slurring. In the middle of dinner, everybody was enjoying themselves. She told my husband that he's taking me away from her and that she's mad at him because of it. We laughed it off and I asked the server to limit her wine. A little later, she stared at my parents who were having a good time, leaned over to me and asked, is your dad still cheating on your mom? Note, my parents went through a rough patch couple years back and my mom insisted that my dad was not being honest with her. There was no proof, and to say my mom is dramatic is an understatement. They got over it, and still together now. Nevertheless, that period of time was very difficult for me. When she asked me that question, I just stared at her blankly. Part of me was so embarrassed and worried that someone else may have heard what she said, but more so it just brought back bad memories about my parents' marriage on my own wedding. It literally ruined my mood. I was horrified. I straight out told her that it was inappropriate to mention that. She was embarrassed, so she kept drinking more and more. She then started to call her boyfriend to come pick her up. He immediately got annoyed at her because she has been drinking so much and hung up on her. She proceeded to call him 38 times, eventually sitting at the table crying on the phone while both my family sat there awkwardly not knowing what to do. Eventually, her BF agreed to come get her. I had to gather her stuff and walk her out. She did not say bye or thank you to anyone. The cherry on top was that she realized how stupid she was and called me 10 times that night to try to talk to me on my wedding night. I know it's no consolation, but I'll give her 5 points for trying to apologize. This, however, is nothing to the 100,000 points she's lost for her behavior. That bee didn't come. My mother-in-law was upset that my parents renewed their vows during our reception. We were married on my parents' 40th anniversary. They were poor and went to the justice of the peace. Never had anything formal. Never even had a formal picture taken. In 40 years. My mom died last year, so giving her the chance to feel like a bride, even if it was several decades after she was married, is something I will be proud of and happy about forever. One of my husband's old friends was a bridesmaid. We were super laid back. Bridesmaids didn't have to buy dresses. Nothing was mandatory to attend, etc. This woman would message me non-stop about her problems. We can't make it to. We had to borrow clothes for the wedding. We don't have a ride. Can your fiance pick us up, etc. I was cool about everything. Come to what you can. Yes, we'll make sure you have a ride. Wear what you have. It's not a big deal. But to her, everything was a big deal, and I spent more time dealing with her drama than my own things that needed to be done. After the wedding, she turned the crazy up to 11 and started picking fights on social media. I very quietly removed offending posts and limited my posts that she could view without unfriending her. She flipped out. I said that I would like for us to remain civil for the sake of my husband, who was a friend of hers, but requested that she stop involving him in our arguments and that we limit our interactions on social media. Then I was bombarded with things like, well, at your wedding your friend said I didn't get pretty flowers in my bouquet just because I didn't show up to your stuff. She then posted screenshots of our private messages, like a 12-year-old. Luckily she came off looking worse. My husband told her that she needed to act like an adult, and we cut off contact when she failed to do so. Some people are just nutty, crazy, or just wanted to freak your husband. Not my wedding, but my brother-in-law's. Bill and his wife were the first of 3 siblings to marry. Bill insisted, and got her way, on the following. 1. Bill and his wife hire an aunt with a really good camera to take the wedding photos. She showed up with a point and shoot. I am a professional photographer, with the core of my business being weddings. At Mill's insistence, I was not allowed to attend anything but the ceremony and reception. 2. Bill and his wife weren't allowed to have any alcohol or dancing, because those things make people sinful. Everything was done by 6 p.m. When my husband and I got married, we did everything how we wanted and didn't care what Mill said. Professional photographer, drink tickets, a dance, etc. The evening went without incident. Coincidentally, or maybe not, Mill divorced about 1.5 years later to marry a man she was having an affair with. He turned out to be a convicted diddler. Mill told us it's just a sin, and made all sorts of justifications when we confronted her about her deception, dishonesty and apparent disregard for the safety of her grandchildren. No one in the family talks to Mill anymore. Maid of honor. She was great leading up to the wedding, very helpful, and liked being involved in the planning. But when the big day came, she became a whole other beast. Scowled the entire ceremony. Started telling other members of the wedding party that the bride slapped her across the face. She didn't. She killed a mosquito on the maid of honor's back. Then she complained that she wasn't in enough of the photos. Finally, at the reception, she continued spreading lies to the mother of the bride and the wedding party and anyone else who would give her attention. The mother of the bride was gullible and believed it all. This led to the bride being berated by her mother and the wedding party for things she didn't do. Inside the women's restroom where nobody else could get to her, not even the groom. The bride cried the entire night of the wedding, and the next day the maid of honor emailed the groom with a list of reasons why the bride was a horrible person. This is a two-parter. My grandmother made my sister late to her reception. wanted to give her a large check as a gift, but insisted that her and my, sorry, but spineless, grandpa give her that gift in private. Everyone left the house for the venue, and an hour later, my sister arrives. Apparently my grandmother essentially held her hostage with the dang thing, and only gave it over after giving her a huge lecture and saying a bunch of sadly typical, poisonous things. The start of my sister's reception was no bride, and then an upset bride putting on a strong show for people. I know her well enough to know it when I see it. The next part is worse. My great grandmother didn't show up to the wedding or reception. That stung. As you might imagine, she only lived around an hour away, but my grandmother had mentioned that my Gigi didn't want to make the trip. We found out later that this was because my grandmother told her own mom that my sister didn't care if she made the trip or not, so she stayed home for her uncaring great-granddaughter's wedding. Hurt all around. Not even the worst crap my grandmother's done in the last 15 years. I want to love her, but I'm of the belief that the world will be a better place when she's not in it anymore. She's too consistently toxic to anyone naive enough to let her close, and it makes me more sad than angry these days. Came up to me at the reception and said, "OMG, wow, your dress is stunning. I mean, my wedding dress is my favorite wedding dress of course and is way prettier than anyone else's," as she looked me up and down, "but I actually like yours." The emphasis on the actually sounded like she was surprised I could look good in a dress. B. In this case, I was that B. At my friend's wedding, they had a bench for people to sign and wrote well wishes on. On the underside, I wrote, "If you can read this, you two must be in a terrible fight. Now kiss and make up. Drunk me, and sober me too." Thought it was funny, since it's not obvious. The happy couple did not find it funny. Oops. No, that is hilarious. At my wedding, my wife decided she wanted squares of fabric instead of a guest book, which were later turned into a quilt. Her favorite square if from an anonymous well-wisher who wrote, "May all your ups and downs be under this quilt." Bridesmaid bitch face spent the morning telling my wife it was pouring. The aisle of our outdoor wedding was a trough of mud, and her gown was surely going to be ruined before she got up the aisle. Bridesmaid, normally narcissistic and insufferable, went into damage control mode and gave bridesmaid bitch face stupid tasks to do to keep her away from the wife while preparations finished. Turns out the rain cleared out in plenty of time for the lawn to dry, and all we had to do about the middle aisle was move where the seats were set to the opposite side of the oak we were wet under. Not my wedding, but a close friend's. She had 6 bridesmaids. 2 were pains in the butt. One called her constantly leading up to the wedding to cry about how she was single and to beg the bride to invite more single guys that she knew. Other one put up a stink about not wanting to wear the jewelry the parents of the bride bought for everyone, then refused to wear the same color nail polish as the other bridesmaids. This wasn't the bride's request but a suggestion from the other bridesmaids. The bride knew she wasn't as close to all of us and offered to seat her at a different table with people she knew better. She chose to sit with us, then complained that we drank 3 bottles of wine between 10 people. Yelled at the bride because she had a personalized thank you to every member of the wedding party. Gave us stink eye all night, then left minutes into the reception without saying bye to anyone, including the bride and groom. He attempted to tip a drink on my best man. The best man's mum and longtime family friend had to stop him. He wasn't happy. Pretty sure he also spewed in toilets. Not my wedding. It was my ex-brother-in-law's. His mother claimed to be a self-employed caterer, and while she had worked in the industry in the past, she had no actual business to speak of at the time. She just had a normal domestic kitchen with no facilities to prepare or store large amounts of food and a rather cavalier attitude to cleanliness. She already had a very dodgy track record with her previous attempts. After insisting on catering for my ex's 21 Street, she had given a couple of people food poisoning and delivered a quiche with mold growing on its base. She insisted on catering her son's wedding, but he was refusing. He knew that she couldn't possibly do a proper job of it, and besides, he wanted his mother at his wedding as a guest and not as paid help. So she was told that a professional caterer was going to be employed. On the big day everything was going well, and while the caterer was setting up for the evening party, the mother accosted me and asked me and my ex to run her home in my car. When we got there, she had prepared a whole load of food which she wanted to take to the party. Despite my protestations, she insisted, so we loaded up a huge pot of curry, a gigantic trifle and about half a dozen other plates of random food. When we got back to the venue, she asked us to unload it all and add it to the paid catering. I managed to grab the groom before we took anything in and he flipped. Apparently he and his bride had already had a big argument with her and insisted that they were not serving curry at their wedding. Whoever made it. He sent my ex inside to keep his mother busy while we hauled the curry across to the other side of the car park and poured it down a storm drain before throwing the pot in a builder skip. We attracted the attention of a group of teenagers that were hanging around on the car park and he handed them the huge trifle and told them to get rid of it for him. All of the smaller dishes ended up going inside, including a rather odd looking cake with bright green icing. She didn't notice that the curry and trifle were missing until it was time to eat. We all pleaded ignorance and suggested that the real caterers had removed them, or someone had stolen them. When we left for the evening, several of the cars in the venue windows were smeared with trifle, courtesy of the gang of teens. So we put the blame on them for sneaking in and stealing the food. Everybody who ate the weird looking green cake got food poisoning. I seriously want to know how someone manages to frick up cake so badly that it gives people food poisoning. Told my wife and I less than a week before the wedding that she couldn't go. She was a bridesmaid because she'd gained weight and her dress didn't fit anymore. Then she showed up unexpectedly as a guest and awkwardly avoided us the whole night. She's my cousin. Friend's wedding 2 years ago. Outdoor wedding. The groom's mom is overbearing to say the least. She's the mom who comments on every single one of your Facebook posts. The mom who texts you at all hours for the simplest of things. She just would never shut the heck up. When it came time to give the speeches, she wasn't asked to give one on purpose. What does she do? Grabs the mic out of the father of the groom's hand and gives a 15-minute speech. The highlights of the speech were, she wants a grandchild by the end of the year. She is so proud that they allowed her to live with them when they buy their house. News to everyone at the wedding. She calls the father of the groom hot cute. She pretended to fall 3 separate times during the reception and screamed like she was being stabbed. The best part? She was in every single picture taken at this wedding. Even the bride and groom's. Not a single picture was taken without her in front of it. Overbearing to the maximum. 0/10 would not recommend. That B was my sister. She was going through a separation from her husband and was miserable, so, of course, had to be miserable. She complained about the venue. Complained about the dresses. I let all my girls pick out their dresses as long as they were black, so they would reuse them. Complained about the food. I made sure there was vegan food for her. However, to top it off, she took 2 morphine during hair and makeup, so that when we were doing the processional, the best man had to help her walk and stay upright. I should add that she has had chronic, lifelong pain issues and has somewhat of a tolerance. I forgot. And in talking with my husband last night about our wedding, I remembered that she also told the hair and makeup girls to go easy. I don't want to look like Chachu the Chinese W. One of the girls was Asian. I was mortified and tipped them probably far more than I should have. What's the most uncomfortable situation a nice guy has put you in? Met a nice guy over OKC a couple years ago. I gave him my number after we chatted for a bit and talked about possibly meeting. When he suggested we meet at a local elementary school in the middle of the night, I noped the frick out and told him it was nice talking to him but I didn't want to meet anymore. He kept trying to convince me by saying he would buy me gifts. He really likes me and thinks we could hit it off. When I told him no, he blew up and called me a B, a W, the usual. He tells me that I now owe him $15 because he had already bought me a present for our first date and that I needed to meet him right now to give him his money. Or I could meet him and have a good time and forget about all of this. Blocked his number right away and didn't hear from him until the next day when he calls me from a different number. When I picked up, he acted pleasant and asked me what time we were going to meet today for our date. I told him to frick off and blocked him again. Then I get a text a couple hours later from another freaking phone number saying that if I don't meet him, he was going to kill himself. After a bit of unnecessarily dramatic conversation, I basically told him that I didn't care if he killed himself. He was psychotic and needed to leave me alone. I blocked him and forgot about it. Fast forward to about 6 months ago when I got a text from an unknown number. I knew exactly who it was when I read the text. I have $20 and a fun night planned for us. Want to meet sometime soon? Miss you. Blocked it. Changed my number. Never giving it out to a stranger again. A whole $20. Oh. There was a guy in high school who had a crush on me. He was never shy about it, and from day one he made me feel really uncomfortable. He'd ask me out multiple times a day, always in front of my friends, who didn't help because they'd always egg me on to go out with him. I was the new kid in school and they'd all been friends with him since elementary school. When I kept saying no, he assumed it was because I was seeing someone else, so he started telling people I was sleeping with random guys in school. I wasn't. I had no interest in dating any of the boys I went to high school with. Anytime I tried to tell him to stop doing that, he, and anyone else around for that matter, said he was just joking and I needed to lighten up. It all came to a head at the homecoming dance my junior year. He was a senior, so it was his last homecoming. Apparently, the day before homecoming he told one of my friends that he'd asked me to the dance and I said yes. He had not asked me. I never had any intention of going to the dance. He kept going on to my friend about how special he wanted it to be, that he spent all his money on tickets, gas, new shoes and a corsage. My friend was so excited for him that she went over to his house the day of homecoming and helped him get everything ready. She also told all our friends what was going on, so everyone was under the impression I was going to the dance with him. Let me also add, no one checked with Emmy that I was going to the dance, so this was all going on without my knowledge. He told everyone that I was going to get dropped off by my parents, so he and all my friends waited outside for me. They waited for 3 hours. Apparently anytime my friends told him to come inside and that I wasn't coming he'd start tearing up and say, just 5 more minutes. So of course I show up to school on Monday and everyone was furious at me. None of my friends wanted to talk to me. I sat alone at lunch for 3 days completely confused about what was going on before some girl I'd never talked to before asked me why I'd stood this guy up. So I went up to the guy when he was alone, asked what the frick he'd done, and he just started laughing hysterically and said, if you agree to go out with me I'll tell everyone it was just a misunderstanding. Never talked to the guy again. It permanently damaged my friendships with several people because they thought I was a massive butthole to this guy who they thought was really sweet. I had to get a ride from a friend my junior year of high school. For some reason I didn't have my car. I don't remember all the details. He stopped about a mile from my house and pulled over onto the side of the road. He told me he had a dream where we had made out and that I was a really good kisser and he decided I could either walk home from there or kiss him. I'm a big dude and at my first semester at a university, I came in as a junior. There was this guy that was just way too freaking into me and he was super creepy about it. The dude would just sit uncomfortably close to me. Like if I was sitting on a chair, he'd sit on the armrest. Or if I was talking to someone, he'd place himself directly between me and the person I was talking to. It was annoying. He would always bring up discussions to make sure everyone in the room knew he was bi and ask everyone their orientation. And every dude would answer straight and he'd awkwardly flirt with me or some other dude. After months of this, we were playing ping pong and were getting in a stupid argument where he was just flat out wrong. It had something to do with game engines and pixel art. It was stupid. He would hate to admit he was wrong but he decided this was a good point to show me he was able to accept defeat in an argument. He goes, "Shed, I have Asperger's. It's really hard for me to look someone in the eye. I can only do it if I am really mad at a person. Or if I really want to frick them. But don't worry, I'm not mad at you all," while staring right into my face. I just put my crap down and walked away. Okay, that Asperger's comment pee me off the most about this. You do not weaponize a mental illness. Ugh, what is wrong with this dude? I was like 19 and working third shift at a gas station, casually sweeping the floor. The door opens and I hear that ding, so I look up and make eye contact with some guy. I can't explain what was going on in this guy's head, but it was like he thought it was some kind of slow-mo movie situation, and he staggered back, gasping, and widening his eyes and staring at me. I am not the kind of person to notice this kind of stuff in other people. I felt like I was reading a scene from Twilight in my head. I went behind the checkout counter. He grabbed his Red Bull or whatever. He kept obviously looking at me in shock and shaking his head like he was trying to psych himself up for something. Ladies, you know that feeling when you know someone wants to catch your attention and talk to you but you're trying to keep it casual. Full stop. This went on for like 20 minutes and I couldn't accomplish anything because I'm waiting for this dude to check out. Anyway, so he walks up to the checkout super dramatically. I check him out. He stares the whole time and finally sighs, saying, "I never expected to see such a beautiful woman at a gas station. This is fate. You shouldn't be working here. I just can't help myself. I have to ask you to go out with me." I said sorry, I have a boyfriend. He seriously looked enraged. He clenched his fists and gave me this overly dramatic scary look, grabbed his stuff, and stormed out the door. He moved his car so the bright headlights were facing the front of the store and sat there until the next customer came, probably an hour later. Honestly, I wasn't too scared. It was just like, really? I just wanted to finish my list of duties at this crappy gas station and live my life. But some joke concocted a bizarre dream scenario in his head and somehow that was my fault. Gotta love the sheer stupidity of thinking both that you're way too pretty to be here, but then being shocked and enraged that you could possibly have a boyfriend. What a nutcase. Nice guy said he was doing me a favor by trying stick his hands down my pants, because he was the only one that would give me experience being the size I was. Jokes on him. I lost 65 pounds after that and turned my life around completely. Frick that noise. It doesn't matter how big you are, debauchery is never ever fricking justified. Had a very difficult, traumatic ending to a long-term, live-in engagement. He went to jail. I decided to go to Europe to backpack for the summer. Best friend, M, agreed to come along, and was very aware this was a post-breakup getaway, to clear my head and have fun. He flew out ahead of me to visit family. I arrived at the airport to see him waiting for me in Europe on bended knee, ring and flowers and all. I was furious, and that friendship was destroyed. Vacation was equal parts horrendously awkward and tense, and amazing, but ended with him drunkenly ranting about it all again in a hostel one night, ultimately becoming carnally and physically aggressive toward me, and a group of stranger hostel bunkies helping to quietly pack my stuff while he was finally passed out, and get me to the airport and home immediately. I haven't seen him since, about 8 years now. How can you possibly justify proposing after something like that, lol? Met a guy at a gathering at a mutual friend's place and ended up getting stuck talking to him all night. Night ends and I don't give it another thought. Couple weeks later he calls my house. I didn't give him my last name or phone number. Since he now has my number, he also knows my address and starts showing up at my house at weird times, sometimes with his equally creepy sister. Fast forward a few years, I haven't lived at home for at least a year. He shows up. Dad answers the door and just tells him I'm not in, not that I don't live there or anything. Later that same night, Dad lets the dog out for a pee before bed. Dog disappears into the backyard, chasing something she really wants to catch. Thinks it's a skunk or something until he hears the gate on the neighbor's fence open and close quickly. Dog has chased a person out of the backyard. My old bedroom window faced our backyard. We don't know for sure, but I think my dog chased that freaking creep out of our yard. Frick you, Adam. That's a good doggo. Drinking too much on a first date in order to stay over at my apartment and sleep on my couch, and then try to worm into my bed at 3 AM. Same thing has happened to me. I knew this kid in 9th grade who seemed like a nice enough dude. Let's call him Frank. We became friends over our mutual love of video games, with him seeming to be a lot more invested in the friendship, but like I said, he seemed harmless. One day, I invite him over to my house to play games on my PlayStation. We have a good enough time, him continuously talking about how he's so happy to have a friend who likes video games and is a girl. Red flag, I know. I get to school the next day, and during class, my friends tell me that Frank went and bragged to anyone that would hear that I invited him over and that he heard I was easy and brought a condom just in case. Being an angry and petty teenager, I walk up to him during lunch period, in front of a bunch of guys, and called him out for what he said. He began stuttering, but before he could finish, I told him he was a creep and to never talk to me again. Cut to a few months later, and I'm called into the vice principal's office. I get there, and she asked me if I was friends with Frank, and I responded that we used to be. She asked what ended our friendship, and I explained the situation to her. She looks at me and says that's not what he told us, but I think I know who's telling the truth. Turns out that after I ended our friendship, Frank fixated on another girl, only to discover she had a boyfriend. Frank decided the best course of action to get rid of the boyfriend was to pull a knife on the kid in the hallway and threaten him. Security of course gets him and discovers he only had a butter knife. Still, he threatened someone, and so he was called into the principal's office, whereupon he explained that the only reason he pulled the knife on this guy was because he was so heartbroken after I dumped him following our 6-month anniversary and fell in love with this other girl because she treated him right. He got suspended, but since it was close to the end of the school year, he just never came back and transferred schools the following school year. Good riddance. I considered him a friend. Stayed at his apartment when visiting his town. He slept in the living room, I in the bedroom. When it got late, he started making jokes about how he had hidden the bedroom key and that I should get ready for him. I spent the night half awake and fully dressed from sheer fear. In the morning, I packed and wanted to leave, but he wouldn't let me go without having a goodbye kiss. He physically blocked the door so I couldn't get out. I tried to play it off and somehow managed to squeeze by him without getting kissed, but it was a terrifying experience, and that was the end of our friendship. Well, that is just something else. Holy heck. A good buddy of mine was moving across the country. Had known him for a while, and while he's very gay, and I'm not, we were still pretty close friends. He had his going away party, a very gay bar here in Austin. No big, I'm comfortable in my being straight. I'll go and have a few drinks, dance a little and go home with my girlfriend, who went to the party with me. Well, we get there, and about 20 minutes in, she gets a text that her friend's sister had been in a bad car accident, so she leaves to go help her friend. I decide I'll stay for another hour or so before heading home. I'm at the bar, having a drink, and I start to feel tired, so I'm going to go outside and call an Uber. As I'm outside, one guy from the party group, Bill, who I didn't know at all, asked what was going on, and I told him I was leaving. He was like, dude, I live right by you, I'll drop you off. I didn't think about it at the time but would have no clue where I lived because we barely had been introduced at the party. I get in his car, and as we turn the corner, he puts his hand on my leg. I kinda snap out of it and say, you know what man, I'm uncomfortable here. Why don't you let me out of the car? I get the whole nah bro, I'll get you home safe, it's fine. And won't stop, doesn't pull over, comes up to a stoplight. I try to open the door, and the door won't open. He won't look at me, and by this point, I'm saying very forcibly to let me go. I normally conceal carry, but not this night since I was in a bar and I was drinking. Both illegal to carry a gun while doing so. After a few more lights and silence where I realize that he's taking me somewhere against my will, I realize that I have a window breaker on my keychain. It's one of those combo thingies that can cut a seatbelt and break a window if your car is underwater. So I pull it out and immediately break the passenger side window at the next light and try to start crawling out. Luckily, there were like 8 people that saw it happen and came running over. He still wouldn't unlock the door. When he saw them running over to help, he opened the door and pushed me out and sped off. He was in a stolen car, and no one knew him at the party. He had just started associating with our group early on and I thought he was part of the party. It was scary crap. I worked for a few years at a children's museum. There was this single dad with 3 daughters, who was cute but way too old for me, especially at the time, when I was 19 and he was about 35. I also got a weird vibe from him, but he was always very sweet, if a little uncomfortable. His daughters were adorable. The following events happened over probably a 6-month period. One day, some guest approaches me and asks me if I've seen this missed connections on Craigslist about the museum. It was about me. The guy was writing about things we had talked about and was saying how good we would be together, etc. Thinking back, I honestly think that she must have been friends with the guy, because it was too weird that she approached me out of all the other workers, then asked me what I thought about the guy who wrote the ad. Later, he found me on Facebook and tried to add me. I didn't add him, and the next time he was in the museum, he followed me room to room and just glared at me from afar, not talking to me. Super uncomfortable. I thought it would be easier just to add him, so I did. Then he starts commenting really weird cringy obscene stuff on my photos, like a gif of Pikachu biting his lip, or just fap, so I decide enough is enough and deleted him. Then he tries to win me back or something. He brings a wrapped canvas to the museum and gives it to my boss, saying it would be too weird to just give it to her, and my boss calls me down later and makes me open it in front of everyone. It was a very fun workplace and we loved to rip on each other, and it was a painting of one of my photos from Facebook. I was so mortified. I put it away, but one of my co-workers, and also my best friend, replaced the clock in the break room with my portrait, because she is a dong lol. While it was funny, I also asked my boss to kinda watch out for him, so from then on I didn't see him anymore, and I blocked him on Facebook, so I think I'm safe. Out of all the weird crap he did, the Facebook comments are the most baffling. Fap is the worst possible thing. I bet she would be into imagining me at my computer desk, masturbating in the dark while stalking her Facebook. Nice guy from college, we're talking trench coat and fedora, fingerless gloves, pathetically sleazy smile, the whole shebang, in a tropical country, at that, who kept trying to talk to me even as I was clearly trying to do my homework. Now, I was okay with multitasking. I could do homework and listen and respond to him, but he wouldn't have it. Hey, Tuna, you know what? I really hate it when women, yes, not people, women, specifically, ignore me. I was dumbfounded but also really offended, so I shot back that I was listening to him, even if I wasn't looking at him. No, but when I'm talking to someone, I want them to look at me. Friend overheard this and went off on him faster than I did. He left me alone after that. Not as terrible as the other answers here, but that was my first real taste of it. It's amazing how Andy Bernard's voice immediately appeared in my head as soon as I read "Hey, Tuna." A co-worker gave me a ride to the train station because I had missed my bus when I was a trainee. It is a 10-15 minutes ride, and I thought it nice of him but did not think much of it. I thought he was just helping out. When we were still in the car, he then mentioned wanting to invite me for a drink one day, then offered me to drive me all the way back home. He was living near the train station we were heading to, and it would have made a 45 minutes drive to get to my place. I declined because I felt uncomfortable, and because without traffic the train was actually more convenient for me. He mistaked my refusal for politeness or just outright ignored it and insisted, saying it was not bothering him to drive all the way here. At this point I did not care about him, I was just starting to get scared. He insisted and I had to argue and practically begged him to just drop me at the train station. Finally mentioning that my dad was waiting for me anyway at the terminus, and pretended we could have a drink someday, and he let it go. But it all happened as we were driving in the highway, so I really felt trapped and it was really uncomfortable. Thankfully it was my last week here and I avoided him the last few days I worked. Let me sleep over because I lived an hour away and we'd been drinking. And he pulls the "Ole, you're really lucky I'm a nice guy. Most guys would force themselves on you right now, but I don't because I'm nice. You're really lucky." Despite us having been normal platonic friends for a few months before this, and me having established a few times that I wasn't interested in anything else with him. I wore a V-neck t-shirt, not a deep cut V that actually shows cleavage. A cotton athletic tee with a college logo on it that was basically a crew neck but just happened to have a V-shaped neck. My ex-boyfriend, very religious, told me it was rude of me to tempt him so he would fall from grace and want to sleep with me. He kept making comments and passive-aggressively shaming me the rest of the night. I had just come home from the gym and was wearing sweatpants over jogging shorts. Women of Reddit, what is your nice girls finish last story? I had spent a year building up the confidence of my ex-boyfriend who was extremely insecure, consistently reinforcing him that he is attractive, smart, worthy of any woman's time, you know, stuff a girlfriend should do for their partners. He left me for the girl he thought he never had a chance with because, in his words, "You made me feel like I could do anything I want." I did not realize that involved doing other girls too. I was voted into president of student council in my college. I worked with younger girls who just wanted the title on their resumes and perks. I kept strict with them that the students' money should be for prizes and awesome parties for the students, not expensive trips and rewards for council members. Tuition is expensive enough, we should give back as much of that as possible to the students' experience. Well, after almost an entire year of fighting with these selfish people, they thought I was being unfair to them, voted me off with a week of my term left, so they could go on one last student paid trip while charging the students for the last activities they put on. It was crushing and really put bigger politics into perspective for me. First grade, I will never forget, our teacher, who up until this point I viewed as a champion of goodness and justice, had to leave the room and told us to sit silently Indian style. Yes, I'm that old, in front of her chair to wait for her return. I was the only one who did it the entire time she was gone. Meanwhile, about 8 little butthole boys ran around screeching like hooligans until someone shouted, "Teacher's coming," and those misbehaving brats lined up in front of me like little angels right before she entered the room. They all got lollipops for being in the front row. I had left some space because I had remembered how teacher had always laughingly said, "Leave a little room for my feet." Everyone else, myself included, got punished. My face burned with rage and I cried, but I did not tattle because I knew teacher didn't like tattletales. The injustice burns me to this day, and that was the day I learned life isn't fair. I was 6. My face burned with rage and I cried, but I did not tattle because I knew teacher didn't like tattletales. You're making me burn with fury. That's just crazy. Go get yourself a lollipop tomorrow. P. Made a certifiable best friend my sophomore year at college. We were both studying in Ohio, but originally from Indiana, so we carpooled to visit home. We became inseparable and I bent over backwards to help her with any little thing. She was even the one to let me know that we would be applying to transfer to a school back in our home state, where her boyfriend attended. I wasn't thrilled with paying super high out of state tuition, so I agreed. Flash forward a year, we're settled at our new college and she's cheating on her boyfriend. Hooray. I convince her to break it off with him. I was still good friends with the guy and trying to hook up with his musician neighbor, so one weekend while attending one of his house parties, he pulls me away to bemoan his breakup and go on and on about how they'll get back together, they're destined for each other, etc. I felt bad for the guy, not only because he was a super nice dude, but also because his ex-GF, my BFF, had her new boyfriend in her dorm room and were going to town. I cracked. I grabbed him by the shoulders, told him, "Don't you ever tell my BFF this, but you need to move on. She has. She's happy and you deserve to be happy. Just let it go." Next morning, my best friend has sent me Facebook messages galore calling me a traitor, awful person, etc. So yeah, I lost my best friend at the time because I told her ex-BF to move on. In hindsight, she was a pretty awful friend. TLDR. Told my best friend's ex-BF to move on. Best friend called me a traitor. I dated someone through the end of high school and most of college. We started out completely in love and constantly together, and then drifted into, well, let's just say I thought we were always in love, but looking back, it's clear we weren't exactly on the same page. This guy graduated from college a year before me, and invited me to his graduation. I hauled butt for nearly 2 hours on the subway to the other end of New York City. Didn't know where his family was sitting and all his friends were in the ceremony, so I sat alone for the whole boring thing. Afterwards we met up and said hi to his parents, who then went home. I was in college in another city, so I was looking forward to spending some one-on-one time with my boyfriend who I didn't get to see that often. We went over to his dorm, where he informed me that he still had to move all his stuff out. Where were all his friends? Nowhere to be seen. Strong guy neighbors? Nada. Family? Gone, obviously. So who was going to help him schlep all those heavy boxes down to his car? Why, his sweet, loving girlfriend, of course. I don't remember how long it took, but I was glad when we were finally done, because it meant I was finally going to enjoy some romantic time with my guy, right? Haha, no, silly rabbit. No sooner did we finish shoving the last box of crap into his car than he said, "Well, thanks for your help. I'm going to go hang out with my friends now." I thought we would be spending some time together. Just the two of us. I spent most of the year 200 miles away. Dumbass. Yeah, no. I want to go see my friends. The ones he has been hanging out with like every single day. But you can come too, I guess, if you want to. I declined and went home. The penny finally dropped, as they say. I finally understood what he felt for me, which was nothing. Then I spent the next several months solidly kicking myself for being that dumb. I can't say my love life has been perfect since then, but at least I know I will never allow someone to take me for granted that way ever again. My good friend had horrible breast cancer. During her recovery, her good friend who was a nurse hung out with and helped with her recovery. It turns out the good friend was having an affair with her husband. I hope your friend is doing okay. This one hit me hard. Had a close male friend who had a rough breakup with his GF who cheated on him multiple times. We had always been attracted to each other but timing had never been right. After a while he asked me out, and I told him it might not be a good idea, as he seemed to still be affected by his ex. He waited a few more months and asked again, claiming he was over her. It was one of the best relationships I've ever had. We truly loved and cared for each other and had so much fun together for over a year. We discussed moving in together and our respective families were quite happy for us. Then his ex moved back to town. Even though she was living with her new so, she decided she wanted her ex, my partner, back. And apparently he wanted her back, too. I discovered him cheating, which broke my heart. He claimed he didn't know what to do because he loved us both, but ultimately chose to be with her. Now they are married but unhappy, as she got pregnant by another guy just months after their wedding. The whole situation makes me sad still. I can't even feel the slightest bit of schadenfreude. He sounds like a real dummy. You avoided a life of being with a dummy. I had been telling my best friend for months about the huge crush I had on a guy in one of my classes. One day I asked if she would be there when we first hung out so I would be a little more comfortable. She had a class with him too, but neither of us talked to him much. She brought up the topic of sex and was telling him how she'd slept with 5/1-2 guys and was asking him about his experience. I admitted I'd never kissed anyone. After, he asked if she wanted to go to the soccer game with him while I had to go home. Within the week they were fricking and she paraded him around me. I went out to a club with the guy I was dating and my friends, who he didn't really know. When it was time to leave we all walked home together. I was staying over at the guy's house that night. I was pretty drunk and not feeling great so I decided to go ride it and go to bed. I was worried about leaving my friend so I asked the guy I was seeing if he could make sure she got home okay as it was late. She only lived 5 minutes up the road. I waited in his bed for over an hour for him to come back. When he eventually did, he went straight to sleep. I found out a week later that he slept with her whilst I was waiting. This isn't so much about you being nice, as much as he is a piece of crap. I used to, and still occasionally do, bartend at a dive bar of ill repute. The other bartenders treat the bar like their own personal cooler, take advantage of the drugs being tossed their way by customers, frequently get too wasted to effectively work, disappear into the stock room to frick customers while the bar is still open and of course overcharge customers to pocket the extra cash. I don't do any of these things. Don't do any of the drugs offered to me. For the most part, stay sober so as to be able to count money and always let S-faced customers know when they've accidentally given me a $10 bill as a tip when I'm sure they meant to hand me a $1. I have a boyfriend and let the more amorous customers know that I'm faithful and there's no chance. I try to be a good employee. I still get regularly blamed for stealing or drinking the liquor I guess because everyone else always does and the owners are paranoid. That crap pisses me off. It's not like there's a way to save face without throwing your other employees under the bus either. Went on a date with a guy I met through my friends. They're married. It went great. Texting every day, etc. A couple of weeks later, our friends invited us to hang out. After a few drinks, we started playing Never Have I Ever. It ended up coming out during the game that I've never had sex. Long story. He stopped texting me after that. I found out a few weeks later that he started sleeping with one of our friends that was over that night. They started dating soon after that, and coming over to hang out. Then my friends mentioned all of us going bar hopping. It sounded fun, and I was game. Then they said, actually, would you mind babysitting the kids? You're responsible and we trust you. Besides, it's gonna be couples going anyways. I learned that day that responsible fun. At least I have a great job and a motorcycle. I've had friends try that with me. Oh, you should babysit for so and so they can come to the parties we throw. You're responsible. I declined. I work just as much as everyone else. I want to have fun on the weekend, not work more by default so everyone else can have a great time. I had been dating a guy for roughly a month after being friends for a year or so. One day he told me that he wanted to break up because he had realized he was in love with his old friends with benefits, and that I want her to make me happy the way you make me happy : Whoa, that's the most heartbreaking thing I've heard in a while. Hope everything's better now. 12-year-old me was a chubby, socially awkward dork, with braces and awful frizzy hair. The whole 9 yards of awkward puberty. I didn't have many friends because I had awful social skills, and most of the friends I had were boys because I didn't know how to interact with other girls very well. I would always try to be there for my guy friends, always be there when they wanted to hang out or have someone to talk to. Obviously I was crushing on all of my friends. Everyone else was getting boyfriends, why couldn't I have one? Because I was an awkward dorky kid with zero confidence and nothing to offer. That's why. Took me a couple of years to figure out that just being nice wasn't going to get me noticed as a romantic partner. I needed to develop my own personality and grow into a real person with a life. I'm happy I don't just feel like a nice girl anymore. I was infatuated with this guy in my first year of college. We hung out. He lived on my floor, and I really wanted to go out with him, but I was too nervous. So one day, I bake a tray of brownies. I make them from scratch, spending hours to impress him with my man-catching baking skills. I bring the brownies to his room, wearing what amounted to a homemaker dress, and knock on the door. "Just a minute," he shouts. There's some clambering and rustling, but I make nothing of it, thinking he must be playing video games in his underwear or something. Turns out, he was rushing to put clothes on because he had a sex worker in his room, and he thought I was en route coming to investigate the 30-something-year-old woman he had brought into our dorm. Long story short, I ate the brownies by myself that night and he never spoke to me again, perhaps out of embarrassment at being caught paying for sex. I got diagnosed with juvenile arthritis senior year of high school. I decided to go off 180 miles away from home for college instead of going to the school I hated that was 30 minutes away. My first semester went great. I had fun, made friends, and got all A's. My second semester started, and the first day of classes I came down with strep throat. It triggered a huge flare of my arthritis. I could barely move. I asked my parents to let me drop my classes and come home, but they said no. They told me to stick it out and finish my classes and then recover over the summer. I stopped going to class because walking hurt too bad. I stopped eating because the cafeteria was too far away. Failed all my classes. Lost 30 pounds. But I stayed at school because that was what my parents wanted, and I didn't want to disappoint them. I ended up in the hospital. I dropped out of school completely and I'm still trying to get back, now to the school near home. I have several destroyed joints from the flare, some that need replacement. I'm 19. I'm so mad at your parents right now. I'll keep this story in mind. I'm a father and I hope I won't be like your parents. I'm sorry for you. I hope you and your parents learned from this. This is probably going to be buried and is a completely self-indulgent sob story, but WE. In high school I had a massive crush on a guy, and everyone except him knew it. We finally ended up in the same class one year and, to my surprise, he seemed really interested in becoming friends with me, so we became really good friends. We would hang out after school all the time, stay up all night texting. I'd go over to his house on weekends, crap like that. Then he messaged me one day saying how in love he was with my best friend, and asked me if I could help him get her. So I did. I figured he was never going to like me the way I liked him, and I had no right to hinder any relationship he wanted with other people. So I told her he liked her. She didn't resist as much as I'd hoped she would, and they got together. They dated on and off for the rest of high school, and he and I remained really good friends. I pretty much became his relationship confidant. I would be woken up at 3 AM because they had a fight. I had to listen to him practice guitar songs he wanted to play for her. I had to listen to him stress about having sex with her for the first time. He even cried in front of me a few times over her. And, yeah, it hurt a lot and I was heartbroken for years. But he was my friend, and I didn't want to let unrequited feelings turn me into a bad person. It wasn't his fault he didn't love me. Then they broke up for good, and after a bit he moved on to a new girlfriend and completely cut contact with me. I was a really supportive girlfriend for 3 years who was happy to hang out just once a week, around his busy schedule of hanging out with his friends and playing Xbox. I drove everywhere because he couldn't be bothered to learn to drive even though his parents bought him a car. I was enthusiastic and gave about 400% more oral than he ever reciprocated, and that was the limit of it, because of some dead bedroom issue he was struggling with. In return, he never hung out with my friends or did any normal couple stuff like road trips or weekend trips away. I was in a car crash and he didn't bother to come over and see if I was okay, because he was busy hanging out with his best friend he hadn't seen since the day before. I was devastated when we called it quits because I genuinely loved him with my everything and put all of myself into the relationship and he wasn't a bit bothered. I'm so glad I got out though because I have an amazing boyfriend now who loves me and spending time with me. I can't believe I put up with that crap for so long. My ex actually is a nice person and we're on friendly terms. I just hope he grows up and becomes less selfish. Out of the office I have a good one. I was one of the few females in my major, computer science, in university. I had a handful of guy friends and we all got along great. One day, we're all working on assignments together and this one guy is having trouble understanding something. I realize I had solved this problem, so I roll over to see how I can help. I type in some code from memory and try to get it to compile, but it won't work. I'm looking and I just can't figure it out for a few minutes. Then I realize it's just a little syntax error, which is basically just a typo in the code. I wrote else instead of else if. Any other dev will vouch for me when I say little errors like this happen to everyone, and sometimes they take longer than you'd like to admit to figure out. Plus this was first year. Gimme a break, eh? Anyway, so I fix the error and the code works as expected. But what does this guy do? He doesn't thank me for my help. Oh no. He signals all of our other guys' friends to come over and see how stupid I was for making a silly little syntax error. He was laughing as he was saying it and everything. I told him off pretty good and he shut up, but I'm still P to this day. I think he really couldn't stand that the girl was the one that figured it out, so he had to tear me down instead of thanking me. Same guy called off our friendship because I chose to date another guy in our friend group instead of him. I was devastated at the time, but in retrospect it was for the best. I repeatedly lose guys to my best friend. Sometimes I realize that they're not nice guys, but sometimes it's guys that I really like who end up treating her really well while she treats them terribly. She's very rude to all her boyfriends and starts every relationship off telling them I'm gonna dump you in 3 months when I get bored with you. A lot of them think she's joking and then 3 months in, there she is dumping them. I can't tell if she's doing it on purpose or not because I never tell her I like the guys, so I don't know if she's picking up the vibe that I like them or it's completely coincidental. I've told her before that she does this and it's almost like she doesn't care. She just tells me act more outgoing and interesting when we meet the guys and they won't go for her. The worst part is a lot of the guys admit to me later that she's a B to them. They regret going out with her or that they should have went for me when they had a chance. One painful dude in particular told me I wasn't physically his type but she was and that's why he went for her. I know little about your life but this best friend doesn't sound like a friend at all, unless you count her unintentionally showing you these guys are jerk-offs. I got a B in my freshman year wood shop because I wouldn't cut in line to use the machines. I also wouldn't protest when anyone else cut in front of me. As a result, several of my projects were literally the last ones turned in. Nice means spineless, right? Not cutting in line equals nice. Letting other people cut in front equals spineless. This may not be the kind of loser in love story OP might be looking for, but definitely a case of me being way too nice and bad things, almost, happening because of it. When I was in my teens, I liked riding my bike around the river belt in my hometown. Small city, 50,000 people. I did this most weekends, weather permitting. and I usually did it pleasantly alone. One day, I was doing my thing and this middle-aged guy bikes up next to me and invites me to race him. I didn't want to, I was having some quality alone time, after all, but I agreed, because it was the nice thing to do and, like so many others, I was raised to believe that I should make people feel comfortable and happy. So I raced him and he started taking the race beyond where I usually go, to a secluded area. I started feeling worse about this, but was young and didn't understand yet that I can say no whenever I want. We're in the secluded area and the race ends. He starts asking me a lot of questions. I don't think I can use my age as an excuse. I was straight up dumb by telling him where I actually worked. I worked at the library close by. I don't remember any other details about what he asked or said because I was so freaked out that I had actually told a strange, middle-aged man who convinced me to follow him to a secluded area where I work. At this point, I thought of some reason I needed to get out of there and biked away. A lot of those details are hazy to me, but I distinctly remember the next few weeks of work at library, filled with fear that he was going to find me. Important lesson. Never forget that your safety is always more important than someone else's temporarily hurt feelings. Sometimes you have to say no for your personal safety and GTFO. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.